watching the Vomitorium. Did you know that bees make up every percent of my favorite star system? Bees also know that they can go support the show at www.streamlabs.com/Vomitorium Live. Buzz buzz!
Hey, and welcome to the Vomitorium, everyone. As always, I am your host, The Metal. doing my hosting things. We're here mostly tonight. I think we're just going to end up talking about Zenless Zone Zero, just as a warning to anyone tuning in now or watching the VOD at the very beginning, since I never relabel these things. I just finished basically the entirety of the patch. I finished the story and did, I think, 90% of the side content. There's not a lot of side content yet. That's coming in a few days from now. So if you're interested in that, grab the link wherever it is, above or below. Share it out. Somebody particular into the ether. I don't care. If you've done that, you've already done more than your duty. And we'll get into it. I say I did really, really like this patch. We talked it up, what was it? Maybe 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to remember. We had an episode where Buck was on here and we talked about the special program and everything that was coming up in this current patch. It went live yesterday, which is a day earlier in the week than it usually does. Probably contributing to why Banyue's banner was so short. I don't know what's with the timing here. Maybe they're just trying to get things in line for Chinese New Year or something so that the banner change or the next patch falls exactly on it. I don't know. But we're here before the new year. And I got to try it. I said yesterday at the end of the show that as soon as I was done, the first thing I was going to do, shut everything off, and then I was going to go play the new content basically until I got done with it or tired enough to go to sleep. And that's what I did. I played until I was tired enough to go to sleep. Woke up, did some important things, then I went right back to playing it until it was done. So, the good things about it, which I think it was mostly good. I'm trying to think if I could... Was there anything bad? Other than that, it was too long. Yeah, I'll start off with the bad thing about it. Not that it was too long in content. I love content. They can give us as much as they want. I'm not complaining about that. The individual sections, I think, were too long. One thing that I don't like in a live service game, and because it's not like a traditional video game where I can like pause it into a sleep state or find a save spot or something and get back to it. If I close out a live service game, yeah, it remembered where I was, but if I was in a scene or something, it'll just throw me right back into the scene. Sometimes if you're what they call in action, it'll just put you right back into the last scene you were in. And I don't like that. I don't like leaving in the middle of something like that where you don't have a clear stopping point. And I think that the individual missions were just too long. They could have given us even more content, and I would have been happy if they just cut it up into more missions. I think typically they try to have it like 3 main missions per patch. That's kind of the way they decide to divide it up. They're not always even. Sometimes one mission will be really short and the other 2 will be super long, or sometimes 2 of them will be a little short and there's just like one really, really long mission. I think they could divide it up more. I don't think anybody would be mad if they made 5 or 10 missions in a single patch, if it meant that there were more clear stopping points for anybody who wants to just break from it to break from it. I think the way they've designed things, it's not as bad as Star Rail, by the way. This is light compared to that. But I think the way it is now, they pretty much almost intend for you not to play the main content the day it comes out. They expect you to wait for a weekend to do it or something, just so you have enough time. I think that was my only complaint about this patch, especially because it seems even longer than the previous one, which I believe was... not the previous patch, but the previous time they did this, which would have been maybe like 1.4 or 1.5. I don't know, whatever the end time was for Season 1, where they wrapped up the story. This is the same type of patch for that. And those quests didn't even feel as long as these ones did. So that's it. That's the bad. That's the only complaint I really had about it. Otherwise, I was enjoying this a lot. I thought the story was really fun. The characters made questionable decisions, but It was in character, so that wasn't a problem. If it's in character for them to make a questionable decision, then go ahead and make a questionable decision. Does it make me dislike the character more as a person? Sometimes. Does it make me like them more as a character? Very often. And those can be two completely distinct categories from each other. Because this is going to be spoiler free. I mean, we made it 5 minutes into the actual discussion, I suppose. I am not going to spoil anything other than maybe vaguely talking about some beats and more of the mechanics of what's going on. Because it's brand new. It literally just came out yesterday. I probably should not be spoiling it. I probably will just before the next patch. Is very likely. Or if somebody comes on and we end up talking about it. But they have a tendency to want to go with the traumatic, heart-wrenching stories. They've been doing that, I would say both seasons, but season 2 has been more filled with that than season 1. It's almost been like the theme of season 2. Almost every single character story has some type of childhood trauma baked into it, and that was no different this time. Won't tell you what kind of trauma, but both of the banner characters went through something. You can just expect that. I think it had a better, what do I want to call it? Avengers moment than the previous one did. Where there was really cool spots where you get to play as every single team at some point in time that was involved with this story. It took a long time to get there, though. It took a really long time to get there. Don't expect that until you're like at the very end of the last mission. The boss fight was really cool, which I think talking about the boss fight's probably not that much of a spoiler. Describing who the boss is would be, but if you log into the game, you can already fight the bosses a weekly anyway. They have a lot of really sexy bosses. This is one of them. She has really cool mechanics where she has what they call a control move or control maneuver. And during that, it's almost like if you're fighting in the Endless Tower, where with the challenge mode, you can't get indicators during the control movement phase. When she's doing that, she'll still attack you. There'll be a little bit of a warning. You can look for animations. It just won't have the bright pings that you're normally used to in ZZZ. And you have to basically parry all of them. I think you can dodge them too, technically. But you basically have to... No, you can't dodge. You have to parry. You dodge the first one, you parry all the other ones. You have to parry all of them or else you end up taking a lot of damage. But if you do, she goes into a type of stagger window for you to do some stuff to her. Not a full stun, just like the enemy was staggered. I think it can help you lead to the stun window faster. You could time things. You end up breaking Miasma. It is another Miasma boss, as all of them have been. Makes sense. This entire area, the problem has been the Miasma. That's pretty much all I could say about the boss, though, because that's the stuff that you can learn about it through the weekly without having to play through the story. The more and more ZZZ goes on, the more it feels like it really is the spiritual successor, the spiritual sequel by the same company to Honkai Impact 3rd. It feels more of a follow-up to that than their RPG spin-off Honkai Star Rail did. The gameplay is a lot closer. It's the same type of three-man combat. Certain key mechanics are a little different, but the new character, Ye Xiongguang, plays more like a Honkai Impact 3rd character than any ZZZ character did before this. Really fun to play. I ended up getting her pretty early into the patch yesterday. Not early in pity, though. I was already pretty close to pity. I think I got her like 3 after hitting the soft pity line. But I won by 50-50. That's the important part. But she's really, really fun. She has kind of split modes, but you can't switch into them at all times. She's like a empowered sort of Super Saiyan mode, as a good way of putting it. Hey, Mike. Have I talked about Anno talking about the lack of anime for kids? No, I wasn't planning to. I was really only interested in the other part of his interview that we talked about yesterday. I was going to mention that in the chat on your stream, but it ended before I got things typed out. I was on my phone. Today I'm mostly talking about Zenless Zone Zero because the new patch was yesterday and I played through the entirety of it. I was actually finishing playing through it while I was watching your stream earlier. It was one of the reasons I really wasn't respondent in it. And only made a comment pretty much towards the end, even though I didn't watch at the very beginning. I did miss you talking about Anno, but I was there at least since like the 30-minute mark. But I was busy trying to get through this patch as, I wouldn't say as quick as possible. I did read all the content. There was a certain point where like I wanted to get it done before I got on the show today so I could talk about it. And they just kept talking, and they kept talking, and they kept talking, and they kept talking. And that's not a problem. I love the story. But I can read it a lot faster than the voice actors can act it out. So it started getting to a point where I was speed reading and skipping everything as soon as I was done reading the dialogue box. So I don't even know how the actors performed half of the dialogue in the later half of the story. But I know everything that happened. You know, I'm not ignorant to what happened. I caught every single word that was on the screen. I read pretty fast because back in the day, we didn't have voice acting in video games, especially if you were playing a long-winded RPG. You just had to read everything. Every single thing. Some games are still like that. I mean, Pokemon doesn't have voice acting, right? Well, I don't know. Maybe the new one does. I refuse to play it because ZA looks really, really boring. Did you hear? Yeah, I did hear that you're going to invite me. Depending on when it is, I may not be able to show up because every single year, except for last year, because I was still recovering from the cross-country move, we have a New Year's Eve show here on the Vomitorium. But yours might be over before mine even starts. I don't know. It will be 10:30 Central. And I will be going well after midnight. I've had it scheduled on this channel for 2 weeks now. It's been sitting there on the live stream schedule. So, you know, if it's early enough, I might be able to hop on and start and then just have to leave by the time I need to start setting up. That's always a possibility. Depends if for some reason I end up getting busy earlier in the day. I doubt it, though, because it's New Year's Eve. I'm probably just gonna do some chores and maybe work on some art or something in the earlier portion of the day. Hey, Matt. And hey, Fizz. Welcome to the show. Show will start at 5. Yeah, but how long? Is it just going to be the normal show time? If it's the normal show length and I'm not busy, I could probably show up. I'm running an extra long show tomorrow because it's New Year's. We're starting before midnight on the East Coast. And then we're going to go for quite a while afterwards. Let's see. Fizz is writing under a pen name. And you don't know if people read more on Wattpad or DeviantArt. I actually don't know. But I've never really been into Wattpad myself, even as a writer. I knew a lot of people who used to write on that back in the day, but I found the site unappealing in design, so I never browsed it. If somebody sent me their work directly, I would read it. But that's how most things are on the internet, is more people click on direct links than they actually do browsing through things. I've had plenty of views on DeviantArt for written material, but I think I tend to get more just having a WordPress, even often without advertising it. Though I do advertise xdynamischaos.com. Or Tapas is another good one. Typical showtime, I might be able to make it. I'm not going to make promises, but I might be able to. Anyhow, where was my train of thought? I was talking about the Zenless Zone Zero patch. New character. That's what I was talking about. Ye Xiongguang, who plays a lot like a Honkai Impact 3rd character. She has kind of like a Super Saiyan form, is a pretty good way to think about how she works. She has a meter that she can charge up, and then she'll transform for a little bit, blow everything up, go back to normal, and then you're back to charging the meter again. Really, really fun. Really fast-paced character. They give you one of her best partners for free right now, Zhao, who might be my MVP for Season 2 as far as characters, and if you play through the story, you'll find out. Again, no spoilers right now. But she's also just a really fun character to play, little bunny girl running around with like little cartoon Sonic the Hedgehog feet, carrying a giant sword over her head. Really exciting, really goofy. I have a smile on my face anytime I control that character and run around. And they work really, really well together. So I think that's a plus for the patch, too. See, Matthew, I actually don't know how to pronounce your name. I think you probably said it for me. I'm going to say, is it Creek or Crecky? You can respond to that later. But currently trying to get an audiobook made out of your superhero novella. That's pretty cool. I actually need to make audiobooks of the stuff that I've written. I keep sitting down to do it, and then I just don't. I'm an excellent narrator. I should be narrating my own stuff, and I just haven't done it. It's like cake, but with an R. Okay, so it's crake. Got it. Thank you. That is neither way I would have thought that was pronounced just from reading it. Yeah, I think when you came on, I had you introduce yourself, and I completely forgot how you said it. It's usually the safe way when you have a guest on, if you don't want to, like, attempt to not butcher their name, is just let them introduce themselves and then repeat whatever they said afterwards. That's your little trick there. Because you can't say a name wrong if for some reason the person who owns it says it wrong. It's like, well, that's how their family's been saying it forever. It's got to be right. Though I guess in my case, my family kind of says our name wrong. But that's because we say a very Americanized version of my last name and not the way it would be pronounced back in Ireland. So, you know, it's however you feel. The cool part, back where I was getting to, with Ye Xiongguang, also called Xiaoguang as a nickname, is that she, like Yixuan, has a movement ability where she gets to kind of glide around faster. She has the sword case for her horrible, life-sucking mystic sword, and she could just fly around on it. Just like floating around on a brick. It's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. It breaks through boxes, other things in the environment. It's very easy to just pick up everything you pass by. They usually love to give like these big keystone characters some type of ability like that. Miyabi can even kind of dash around faster than everybody else can too. And I think that's a very important thing because most people who play these games play them very, very casually. Even if the character is fun to play, they don't really care what combos they can do, where their frame cancels are, how they interact with other teammates or whatever. What they really care about is, what does this character do for me as somebody who barely cares about the mechanics of the game and plays mostly for the story and the mini games. And that's something she does for you. She lets you just zoom around. Really fun. I highly recommend picking her up. She is the strongest character in the game right now. Like, as we're speaking, she is power crept every other character. I think Miyabi is probably the only person who comes close because she's also a Void Hunter. If you pick her up and use the free Zhao, you will probably be good for the next year. In the same way that Miyabi was fine for like a year before this and just could carry you through most content. You're probably just good if you have her. In fact, I think you're probably doing your account a disservice by not picking her up because they give you one of her best supports, probably her best support, for free. Yeah, you missed out on Dylan, who was her best impact character, her best stunner. Possibly, maybe you picked up Dylan before this. But she'll get a rerun. And other stunners work fine as well, especially if you're playing with a defense character, who they do quite a bit of impact as it is. And switching between them, you're probably still going to hit your stun window. You could swap anybody. Ching Yi's fine. Even Kaleda's fine, right? Just depends if you have enough to cover all your teams. If you're a new player, obviously you don't have Ching Yi either, but you'll probably get a Kaleda eventually. So that's my thoughts on that character. See, Matthew says, my book is called Beacon, the Hero of Heartland, available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold online. I also have a book on Amazon. I have not been promoting it because I'm not happy with the edition. I need to sit down. I was going to do it this weekend, but I had so many weekend projects that I was going to do this weekend that I didn't end up doing half of them. Because the ones I ended up doing just took up too much time. I need to go in and take my fixed manuscript. That's not actually in manuscript form yet. That's the problem. It's in separate pulp chapters. I need to compile them together into an actual manuscript and update the edition on Amazon so people can get the better version of it. And then I'll go back to advertising my book. I have a copy of it. I think it's still fine. Like, if somebody wanted to pick it up now, they could. But I'm not happy with that. It's more than just, like, finding a few grammatical errors I missed the time before. It's also certain changes in which, like, that's not what I meant to write. Even at that time. It's like that. Those were not the words I meant to write. I was in the flow state. They were words that were grammatically correct, and they kind of worked. But if I was a little keener, I would have noticed those were not the words I meant to write. So those are some of the things that I was updating too. And probably also giving it a new cover when I update it. And then I'll get back to writing Act 2. Trying to think. Where was I? Where was that? Exploration. So the exploration into the new zone is really good. They gave us several new zones. It wasn't just one. I thought it was just going to be one big zone. They very easily could have just given us one big zone to do. They gave us like 3 or 4 smaller zones, all jam-packed with treasures and puzzles and stuff to do, which you definitely need with an expansion this big. This is like the capstone of the story that we just finished for Season 2. I think there might, I don't know, the anniversary, which is probably when the next full version of the game's coming out, is half a year from now. So there's going to be a couple other filler patches in between. I don't expect much of new areas from that. Maybe one total. They'll probably mostly be sending us back to these areas over and over again during that time, and I'm fine with that, as long as they give us enough events to make up for the lack of in-game polychrome that would be in this explorable area. The areas are cool. They look very similar to the ones we're used to. Everything in the Lemon Hollow looks very similar to each other. Kind of makes sense. It used to be a city slash mining facility where they used to mine ether and other things. They should all look very similar in form. There's really cool mechanics in the story. There's Chokwong has a flying sword technique that is very reminiscent of many other things that have showed up in Hoyo games. Yangxing uses flying swords when he fights, which so does Xiaoguang when she fights. But the grapple technique for it is similar to things that you would have seen in something like Honkai Impact 3rd in their Explorer regions, or in Genshin has certain grapple points similarly. And this one does kind of just like zoom you, like warp you right to it, and you'll have several grapple points to get through. That's pretty fun. I think it gives you a nice view of the scenery. There's not really much to it, though. Problem with fixed grapple hooks, I was complaining about this when I was watching Marsupial play through the demo of Expedition 33. I think Expedition 33, great game. Deserved all the awards that it got. But it does this thing that a lot of modern games do that kind of just turn movement into a roller coaster. And it's that grappling to a point doesn't matter if you can't be interrupted from grappling to that point. Or any type of special movement doesn't matter if you can't be interrupted during that type of special movement, or if the movement doesn't actually serve, because you could be interrupted, but if it serves as a way of canceling interruption, right? Like you could use the movement as a dodge. I think Final Fantasy 15 did this really well with the Warp Strike, because the Warp Strike can let you go in, but you could also get hurt in the process if you land in the wrong spot, but it can also get you out of danger. I don't think it's something that belongs in a mainline Final Fantasy game, but 15 was not supposed to originally be a mainline Final Fantasy game, so I give it a little slack on that. It was going to be a spin-off that got renamed, and all kinds of things changed in this process. But I was watching Expedition 33, and there was grapple points, and there were climbing ledges, and there were things where you really couldn't interact with them if you weren't in combat, or you have to not be in combat because combat is a turn-based RPG. But like, there's nothing to stop you from interacting with them. It's functionally just walking. It's a different form of walking. It's the only way you could get from point A to point B. It's not like a way of routing you around to somewhere else you could have walked to. It's not like an interesting way. You're not platforming. You're not parkouring or anything. It's literally the only way you could get to this point. The flying swords, I think, are kind of neat in a little better way, because during the story, there's a couple spots where they are the only way you get to the point, and that's, they're just trying to make it hype. But they also give you elevators and pathways and stuff if you were to come back as the other characters, so it is something that does make the travel unique. You can take shortcuts to the same location you could have gotten to otherwise using the flying sword points. They're not just the equivalent of walking. They're not the only way you can get there. These are things I think you should consider when thinking about mobility and other mechanics in your game. Some people do just like a roller coaster ride. It wows people. They're fine with that. They're like, yes, please, just put something in my way. Let me hit a button. It does something. I don't care if it's actual gameplay. I just want to see something cool. There are plenty of players that are like that. The most of those players, though, are also still equally wowed when you have more intent in your game design. And then you can also impress the people who aren't as easily wowed. If you consider that any type of movement ability I put in the game needs to be more than the equivalent of just taking a bridge to where I'm going. Games need to be more than roller coasters. They need to be about player agency. So, complaining about the player agency part of the exploration, even though the flying swords do on return give you other routes around the place, there's not really a lot of player agency. This has been an issue with Zenless Zone Zero. Actually, I thought I didn't have another thing to complain about, but I did. This has been an issue with Zenless Zone Zero since They've decided that they were going to replace their former form of exploration with actual open zone exploration, their hallways. This probably doesn't seem like much of an issue to most gamers, because if you're a younger gamer who just came in within the last 15 years, that's probably what you expect from a game that's not open world. That any zone you walk into is just a singular hallway. Maybe it might have a branch or two that lead to a dead end and you have to double back. There might be a goodie at the end, an Easter egg, some type of secret, a treasure chest, something. But ultimately, to get from point A to point B, you're just going through a hallway. That's not real exploration, that you're on a guided tour. And that is how the zones are. They're kind of designed more for you to go backwards and get all of the stuff afterwards. I spent a lot more time than I should. I probably could have finished way earlier if I didn't end up grabbing every single side thing along the way. They do feel much more explorative when you go back and revisit them to get everything instead of getting them all at once. But I don't think that is an excuse. I don't think that is me trying to cover for them. But I also think exploration is not the reason why you play Zenless Zone Zero if you do. If exploration was something you were into, you'd probably be playing a game like Genshin instead, which is built more for exploration. Or maybe even Star Rail, where their maps are more than just hallways. A lot of them have many branching paths to them. Some of them even large rooms where you have to scale, and the room itself is a puzzle. That was something that was very common in both Penacony and Amphorius. That's not what you do in ZZZ. It does have two new types of activities, I'll call it. One of them's a puzzle. The other one is more akin to a rhythm game. I would say one's not new. They brought back the laser puzzle from the previous one. So technically there's only one new activity. But you got to do the laser puzzle, so that was something to actually do. It's something that it's easy, but you do have to turn your brain on a little bit. But then there is an explorer boo hidden around all of the zones. Actually, some of them have multiple explorer boos, and they will bring you to certain treasure chests that are buried under the ground after you fix them. To fix them, to tune the Bing Boo back to how it was, there'll be this little rotating kind of rhythm game where you have two different lanes that you have to hop back and forth between. So one of your buttons is to switch lanes. And when you cover the blue buttons, it'll automatically flip them. But when there's a yellow button, you have to actually press in beat with the game, and you have to avoid the red ones. It feels a lot like, I don't know, several games I've played, like Audio Surf or whatever, but just wrapped into a dial. Again, not the most challenging thing in the world. None of the activities in the Zone Zero are particularly challenging. They want to reserve that for the combat itself. And that, you're probably going to have to go to the rotating challenge modes, or some people call them the endgame modes. I don't like calling them endgame modes because the game never ends. But I guess people got into the habit of calling raids in MMOs endgame content. So they'll call things like Shiyu Defense and Deadly Assault and the Endless Tower and all of the other rotating game modes endgame content as well. And I guess that's fair. That's just how they're using the language, and everybody knows what you're talking about. That's where you go for your challenge. You don't play mini games, puzzles, and other activities in this game for the challenge. They're kind of just there to occupy your time. Comparatively, though, I do enjoy these little rotating rhythm game puzzles more than the previous puzzles for tuning Bang Boo. The one just before this was also kind of a rhythm game, but that was just tapping in beat. Like, I guess it's effectively the same thing, but at least this one involves another input. We do shift another input into the rotation. And then the previous one before that was just a circuit maze. that you just had to flip all the switches in the right direction. It's like less than half of a puzzle. So at least that function of the game has been improving. I did not see any Marcel group platforming Bang Boo areas, at least on my first trip there. Maybe I'll see some when I got back. But I hope I don't, because that was an improvement to me. I hate those. I don't inherently have an issue with them putting platforming into the game. But the Bang Boo Fall Guy stuff is probably the worst thing in that entire game that they have made. So I'm kind of glad I have not ran into one yet. I'm probably going to be disappointed when I go back in and I go to collect the few treasures I didn't get, and there will be one of those Marcel group things there. I hope that doesn't happen. But that's a plus for the exploration already, that I did not have to do that. There's a new Shiyu defense. The Shiyu defense, because I brought up the endgame modes, is your equivalent of Memory of Chaos, Spiral Abyss, Quantum Manifold, Quantum Abyss type thing. That's in all of these games. All of them, oddly enough, in 2 different paths. ZZZ has 2 different endgame modes. One rotates way less frequently than the other, that are based off of the same thing. They just got to them in a different way. They're loosely based off of the Bloody Palace from Devil May Cry 3. The tower actually looks a lot more like Bloody Palace, especially with the number of floors that it has. And it's closer to the traditional way. But in Spiral Abyss and Shiyu Defense and all the ones that like that came from a game mode that was based off of Bloody Palace originally. So it's interesting to see this divergent evolution end up both in the same game again. But now Shiyu is fundamentally a little different. It's got less stages. Instead of 7, it's down to 5. But you need more teams. Like the final stage requires you to actually have 3 teams. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I already dislike the fact that Deadly Assault required you to have 3 teams. You could argue that it doesn't, because you only need 6 stars to get all of the pull currency from Deadly Assault every rotation. So you could, as long as you get 3 stars in 2 of the areas, completely scrap one of them. But it's still a mode that requires 3 teams. A lot of people in these games have demanded 3-team content. I think they're insane, or maybe they all just spend a lot more money on this game than I could ever afford to. But my problem with multi-team content is that you actually need the characters to do this. ZZZ's been a little bit better about this. Your characters don't age as poorly as in the other games. They've already buffed older characters a couple times, and in this one, they've given a new way of buffing some of those old characters. Soldier Zero, or was it Silver Soldier? Zero Anby, I think that's her name, has received her second buff, and Ellen Jo has received her second buff. So maybe a lot of people do have enough teams, but it is harder. The more teams that you put on it, the more pressure, because a lot of these things require very specific elemental coverage to work. I'm probably a lot better off now that I have the new character. I've got 3 different characters that have a unique, I guess, type to them. They're effectively ether, ice, and physical, but they're a unique form of it that all do like their own weird thing. So maybe I could probably handle 3-team content, because the other 2 have been really good at brute forcing things. And I think Shiguang will be even better at brute forcing things. I don't like to have to brute force things, but I have the option for it. I do worry for people, because obviously if you're a newcomer to the game, you shouldn't worry about the rotating end game modes probably for a few months after you start, after you build up your roster. But needing 3 means that you're going to be waiting even longer than you had to before. And it also means that you're even more likely to be phased out of being able to clear if you're saving up for somebody, if you pulled with poor decisions, if one of your favorite characters ends up lasping in their ability to clear content. Because it's like, well, that's one of my 3 teams gone. Or like, what if you're like me, where genuinely, I guess I could try to build Haramasa and learn how to play him, but I don't like Haramasa at all. Not as a character. Actually, I think he's fine as a character, but as a unit, as a playable unit, I don't find him fun to play, so why would I want to learn to play him just to be able to clear? What if you're like me and you have very, very low investment in electric units? And for some reason, maybe they just decide 2 of the 3 teams both need electric to clear. It's like, well, then I guess unless I can brute force it, I'm just fucked that round. This is why I don't like the fact that Shiyu now invokes 3 parties at the end. It's still 2 early on. I liked the idea that it would stay 2 forever. And that, you know, it's like, fine, you already added a 3-team form of content. We don't need another 3-team form of content. But now we have it, whether we wanted it or not. Again, I think a lot of people did want it. But a lot of people are like, well, I want something to use my characters for. Fine. Go re-clear it. Try the challenge with a different team. If you only wanted one and done something, then you shouldn't really be complaining. Replayability is probably the most important part of any game. And even if it's a mode, being able to, after you clear it, retry the challenge with a different team of characters can be a very fun thing to do. I do it myself from time to time. Sometimes, even when I thought that I used the right team the first time, I ended up getting a faster score when I redid the Shiyu defense with some other teams. Like, oh, wow. Even though it was ice resistant, of course, Miyabi still ended up faster than me using the right elements, because that's just how it is. Sometimes I feel they listen to the wrong people. No, actually, often I feel like they listen to the wrong people. Because there's a lot of very vocal players that I don't even think they remotely know what they want. They think they do, and they say it all the time, and they also think they're speaking on behalf of everyone, and I don't necessarily know what they want. I don't want to speak on their behalf, but I definitely know what I want more than they know what they want. And I'm sure on an individual basis, if you talk to some of them long enough, both of you through conversation would discover what they actually want. And most of the time, what it ends up being is they just want their units to feel useful. And I think the reason your units don't feel useful is because there's just not enough different things to do in the game in general. Sure, Gentlebird says, squeaky wheel gets the oil. That is true. The problem is nobody writes an email when a company is doing well. Yeah. I mean, some of us will write tweets. I do like writing tweets that congratulate things that I like all the time. If something's good, I'll write it. But that is true. The important things, the stuff that like business emails and or directed comments, usually only come when it's hate mail. Which is why they removed the TVs from the game originally. But yes, I think instead of turning Shiyu defense into 3-man content, a better solution would have just been to make more side modes that allowed multi-team content in general, or this is something they're working on anyway, multiplayer content, because then every time you play with other people, you could choose to play a different character and you'd get a different outcome. They're roguelike. If they did multi-team, roguelike content would be a fun way to use the rest of your characters. Have them have to run down 2 different paths at the same time, and you can make it to where the things one side does on one path affects the other path, so you actually have to think about what you're doing. That could be a fun thing to do. It's like, no, we're just going to ruin the game mode we already had by making you have to invest in more teams. Why would they do that? Well, while it pleases the very vocal people, it also might incentivize you to spend more money. And of course, if you give them a solution that might incentivize the players to spend more money, they'll hop on that one before anything else. There's no delusion about that here. So, yeah, I think I actually found 3 complaints about this patch. Overall, I think it was great. I thought the end of the story was great. I can't judge all the events yet because they're doing that thing where they don't really give you any of the events at the beginning. They want to give you a few days to get through the story because it is like this big, impactful end of a season story. This is like the season finale. And like get through that, and then in like a few days, the events will activate. So I don't know. Maybe the events will bring my overall judgment of the patch down a little bit. From the live stream, though, the events look like they were going to be pretty fun. I think they're not bringing the auto chest back, are they? I don't think I remember seeing it. We've already got it back twice. I don't think they'd be bringing it back again that soon. Because I hate auto chests, and they keep trying to bring it into every single game they make. There's a PvP auto chest in Star Rail right now that is like, no, I'm just going to do the tutorial, like the PvE version. As soon as I'm done with that, I'm dropping it. I don't care if there's like extra rewards behind it. I don't like auto chests. But I don't remember that being in the events. I think it's mostly, I think there's a combat event that's coming up, and there is a minigame event, but I can't remember exactly what it was. And I love their combat events. Their combat events are my favorite events because it's a combat-based game. And I like anything that lets me use the actual mechanics of the game. Not something that was made just for the event. So I'm looking forward to that. I am currently trying to fish for Shiguang's weapon. Because I ended up getting her so early into the patch, I'm going to have plenty of polychrome to fish for her weapon, and that would solve a lot of my problems, because right now I'm overcapped on her crit rate, specifically. She gives you like 50% crit rate when you enter. Not just from her kit. I think it's like 30% of it comes from her kit. But the disc set that you put on her will give you like the other 20% you're missing while you're active in combat when the set is triggered. So you really only need 50% crit on her, and you're hitting 100 most of the time in combat. And I'm sitting at like 79% because I have steel cushion on her for the mostly for the physical damage boost. So if I get her weapon, that will bring me basically right back down to where it needs to be, and I won't have to worry about it. I'll probably have a near perfect build. Not the best you could possibly get, but something that'll be way more than good enough for any level of combat, probably for the next year. Especially with the crit damage boost I'd be getting from the weapon, too. Like, I ended up getting really, really good rolls. I dropped one of mine in the Discord. And just right off the bat, like the very first disc I rolled for her was a Drive 1, which always has to be flat HP for a main stat, but ended up getting attack percent, flat attack, crit rate, and crit damage. And it rolled into everything except for flat attack. It was like 1 into attack percent and then 2 into both of the crit. It was like, this is like a perfect piece. I don't think I could have asked for a better piece than this. So that was great. I've really been enjoying the character a lot. Outside of the story is the problem. Because they started doing these things. I like that it exists. I just wish the option to use yours was there. Where when you're playing through the story, you do have to use the trial version of the character. That's fine, though. It emulates a single-player game a lot. Though I don't know why I couldn't use the one that I built and just swap it in for the trial character. But I would prefer that to not being able to use the story character and just having to, like, watch other people use the character in the story. I would prefer using trial versions of every available character. Not just one, not just who they deem is the most important, but everyone who is currently in that portion of the story, even if it means I don't get to use my characters during that time. I wish Star Rail would take some notes about that. And in the only time they ever did this was for the two, like the penultimate and the ultimate boss fight in the last part of Enforius, where they let you pick any of the Chrysos heirs. The penultimate, it was anyone except for Phynon, because he was the boss fight. But then after you beat him, you could even choose him for the ultimate boss fight. It'd be really cool if there are other games where you're like, these are all the people who are currently in the scene you're in. Here's trial versions of all of them that you can make in the team if you want to play the story characters. Because a lot of times if you're playing through a story, you're like, well, I want to play as the people who are here. If this was like a normal single-player game, I'd be able to play all the people who are here right now. And ZZZ lets you do that. Now, that's something they've been consistently good about, I think, since 1.0. I don't think that was something that was retroactive. I know they changed how that was handled a little bit, but I think it was always there from the beginning. Even when I went back through on our streaming account, it was like that, even though it's a recent version of everything. So, good on you for that, Zenless Zone Zero team. Keep that up. Don't ever change that. It makes the boss fights and the narrative more impactful, getting to do them as the characters that are there in the scene. So I think overall, since it's time to close out, I would probably give this patch by the standards of this game, an 8 out of 10. I wouldn't say that ZZZ is an 8 out of 10 as a whole game, but by the standards of this game, I would give this patch an 8 out of 10. Like, comparing it to itself and other patches. Unlike the recent Star Rail patch, where I gave that, like, a 5 out of 10 by its own standards. So, that's good trajectory. Keep it up. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Make sure you're following, subscribed, whatever. You can go and find the notification for it. We will be having an extended New Year's Eve hangout stream like we usually do. Sorry we didn't do it last year. I was still recovering from a cross-country move, but we will be doing it this year. I'll be in here at, I think, what was it, 11:30 Eastern Time, 10:30 Central, you know, so on and so forth back. And we'll be here till well after midnight, assuming my computer wants to continue to work that long. I'll restart the stream a couple times if I have to. I'll invite callers on. People can come in and talk for a while. Depending on behavior, I might kick some people, but... Or if it gets too crowded, I might kick some people, let some other people on too. But it will be a longer New Year's Hangout stream. And I'll see you guys then.